Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Playmakers. What's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to be going through my start sits at the quarterback position. Normally this video comes out on Wednesday, but I'm going to be traveling for Thanksgiving, so I'm trying to get the content out as early as possible just because I'm not going to be able to record, in the next few days. So all the start sits are going to be coming out today, and then I'll have all my rest of season rankings for every position coming out tomorrow. So I'm still getting out the content, just, not kind of spread throughout the week. But let's get started with the first Thursday night game, first Thanksgiving matchup between the Bears and the Lions. And I think this is a game you just want to fade all the quarterbacks. It looks like Justin Fields is not going to be able to go, so it looks like Andy Dalton will get the start. Not interested there. And then for the Lions, even less interested. You wouldn't think it would be possible to play worse than Jared Goff. Tim Boyle went out and totally proved that narrative wrong. He was significantly worse than Jared Goff, so just get me out of both of those players. In the middle game, we have the Raiders taking on the Cowboys. And this is a matchup like a few weeks ago. Both of these quarterbacks would be locked in starts. Lately, Derek Carr has just not played well. He has not been producing, and this is a tough Cowboys defense, so Derek Carr is going to be a sit. For Dak Prescott, I have him listed as a sit, but there were reports coming out that CeeDee Lamb actually may play on Thursday. This is the way I look at it. Amari Cooper is out. If CeeDee Lamb is able to play, he clears concussion protocol, then I'd feel comfortable starting Dak. I just don't trust Dak if Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are both out. So if Lamb is in, I'd want Dak Prescott in my lineup. And then for the Thursday night football game, we have the Bills taking on the Saints. For the Bills, Josh Allen has definitely been much more inconsistent this year. He definitely hasn't played up to the same standard he did in 2020, but he's still someone that you have to lock into your lineup every single week. For the Saints, Trevor Siemian's just not getting it done, so really no interest in starting him there. Moving on to Sunday, we have the Bucs taking on the Colts. And for the Bucs, Tom Brady is a top-tier QB1, so he is in your lineup every single week. For the Colts, Carson Wentz is kind of a tough guy to gauge because the Colts' rush attack is just so explosive. There's kind of points where he can be phased out of games, like we saw on Sunday. Jonathan Taylor goes crazy. Carson Wentz barely gets over 100 passing yards. But in this game against the Bucs, I really kind of feel like this is the perfect matchup for Carson Wentz. The Bucs have a very strong run defense, so I don't think this is a game where Jonathan Taylor is going to go out and just shred them for like 150 plus yards. The Bucs are going to be putting points on the board. The Colts are going to need to throw the ball. So I do think Carson Wentz can be a solid start this week. Probably not someone you really love in your lineup, but definitely someone who I think is startable in deeper leagues, or maybe your QB1 is on bye. I think it's the Chiefs and Cardinals on bye, so if you have Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz is still a solid guy in your lineup. The next game, just terrible matchup. Jets, Texans. Get me out of all these quarterbacks, whether it's Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco. I don't want any of them in my lineup. For the Texans, same thing. Tyrod Taylor is just not going to get it done for fantasy. In this divisional matchup between the Eagles and the Giants, you just got to keep throwing Jalen Hurts into your lineup as a high to mid-end QB1. That rushing upside has been there all season. For the Giants, total opposite. You cannot trust Daniel Jones in your lineup, especially after what we saw on Monday Night Football against the Bucs. In this Panthers-Dolphins matchup, for the Panthers, I think Cam Newton is a solid start. We saw him, he was the clear-cut starter. They weren't splitting drives with PJ Walker. Cam Newton was the guy. He has the rushing upside. We know he's a red zone and goal line threat to rush it in. 6 points instead of 4 for passing. So I think he's going to be a really solid play this week. For the Dolphins, Tua honestly has not played that poorly this season. He's kind of always been a fringe guy. I think this is a solid week to start him. We've got some good quarterbacks on bye, and he's definitely kind of like a borderline play, but someone that I wouldn't feel terrible with in my lineup, so he is going to be a start. In the Titans-Patriots matchup, I'm actually going to be sitting at both of these quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill has just been abysmal since Derrick Henry went down. He really just hasn't picked up the slack. I kind of thought he could play at least a little bit better, just in terms of getting more volume, more production. That has not been the case. On the other side with the Patriots, I just don't trust Mac Jones on a week-to-week basis. I know, there are some games he could go out, 250 plus yards, 2 touchdowns, give you a solid day. But then there's other games where they're just not going to put the ball in his hands. They're going to run the ball a ton. rely on the defense. And so there's just not enough consistency or ceiling there for fantasy purposes. In a divisional game between the Steelers and the Bengals, even though Big Ben's coming off of one of his best games of the season, he's still going to be a sit. Just not something I think is going to continue week after week. For the Bengals, Joe Burrow really has not had the passing volume I think a lot of people were expecting from him. So he's definitely not like a super solid start every week, but I think he's still a fringe QB1 option that you could feel, semi-confident in your lineup, especially considering the Steelers are dealing with a bunch of injuries on the defensive side. Who knows if a lot of those guys get healthy. Either way, I still think you can trust Joe Burrow in your starting lineup. Then we've got the Falcons taking on the Jaguars, and I'm going to be sitting both of these quarterbacks. This Falcons offense just looks incompetent. Hopefully Cordarrelle Patterson makes his return this week. It seemed like he was a game-time decision on Thursday night, so maybe he does return this Sunday. Still, I don't think I trust Matt Ryan. Really, just without Calvin Ridley there, there's not enough explosion on this offense. The offensive line is not good. The run game is non-existent, so Matt Ryan is going to be a sit, even though this is a fairly plus matchup against the Jaguars. For the Jaguars, no surprise here. Trevor Lawrence is a sit. Really just hasn't shown much this season. Been fairly disappointing. In the Chargers-Broncos matchup, Justin Herbert is a lock in your lineup. It's kind of been a roller coaster with this Chargers offense. Some weeks they go out, they look so good. Other weeks they just look totally, out of sync. But he's kind of one of those situations. His ceiling is so high, you just have to keep throwing him into your starting lineup. For the Broncos, just no ceiling here with this offense or with Teddy Bridgewater, so he is going to be a sit. And then in one of the best matchups of the week, the Rams traveling to Lambeau to take on the Packers. For the Rams, even though Matthew Stafford has kind of had a rough stretch, I still think he's someone you can trust in your lineup. He may not be like that mid-tier to high-end QB1 we saw early in the season, but definitely like a mid to lower-end QB1 option this week. For the Packers, A-Rod is in your lineup. Even though he's dealing with that toe injury, he went out and had one of his best games of the season on Sunday. So against this tough Rams defense, I still think he's someone that you can rely on. Moving on to Vikings 49ers. For the Vikings, Kirk Cousins just continues to produce. He uses those weapons surrounded by Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, and just continues to get it done. For the 49ers, Jimmy G has put together some solid games this season. There's just no ceiling there. They rely so heavily on the run game, and personally, I just don't really trust Jimmy Garoppolo as a player. On Sunday Night Football, we have the Browns taking on the Ravens. For the Browns, this is a no-brainer. Baker Mayfield has been unplayable basically the entire season, so he's a sit. Lamar Jackson, assuming he's returning from that sickness, is going to be a locked-in start, arguably the QB1 rest of season. And then the final game of the week, Monday Night Football, Seahawks taking on the Washington football team. I'm actually going to be sitting both of these quarterbacks. Both of them are kind of on the fringe. For Russ, I kind of just want to see one solid game from him coming back from that finger injury. I kind of bought into him right away, but 2 bad games in a row doesn't seem like a fluke. So just give me one solid performance, and then he'll be right back to a start rest of season. For Taylor Heineke, he's definitely on the fringe here, and if you're kind of desperate, I'd feel totally fine throwing him into my lineup. He's just right on the cusp, and I just don't know if there's enough consistency there for me to want him in my lineup every single week. But that is going to wrap it up for every Week 12 matchup. If you guys enjoyed the content, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Go check out all my other start-sit videos. I have running backs and wide receivers already posted. Tight ends will be posted later today. And then stay tuned for my rest of season rankings, which I'll be putting out tomorrow. But thank you guys again, and I'll see you next time.